Hello student, today we are going to learn FTP model. In the previous class we have already learned about the FTP, what is FTP, what is FTP client, what is FTP servers, how the data are exchanged. We have discussed a lot of things regarding to the FTP. If you want to recap the whole thing about the FTP, just go to the previous video and check it out. Now today we'll study about the FTP model. So let us see what is FTP model. Here, FTP protocols fall within a client server model. Since we have in client servers where data is sent from the client, data is request from the client, and the server respond accordingly as per the request given by the client sides. Therefore, same thing happen here. We have the FTP client and FTP servers, and it completely based on the client server models. Therefore, one machines just give instruction or order, which is also known as a client machine, and send the data, request the data from the server, which is the FTP servers. So when the request is sent, definitely the server will respond. They will give the acknowledge regarding the request, and for this they have to establish the connections. When the FTP connection is established, then the two-way of communication start. We have already discussed these things in FTP topic, where the communication starts with acknowledgement. When the authentications have been done, then connection is established, and there are two-way of communication or two-way of transmission started. One, data transmissions, and second is the control connections we have already discussed. Now let us see, look at these models. FTP model, here is the server and here is the client. These are the file systems. You can see in the file system can be anything with a text, audio, video, and any multimedia things. So, and in the server, you have seen here PI server, DTP server. In the at the client side, you can also see that PI client, DTP client, and of course the PI has a window operating systems and maybe GUI applications. Therefore, it is given GUI. Now, let us see. We'll discuss about the PI and DTP also, but before that, I want to just give the full form of DTP and PI. What is DTP? Transfer process. And what about the PS? Protocol interpreters. Protocol interpreter, and DTP, data transfer process. We'll discuss about this, but before that, we have to see how the model works. We have to establish a connection between the client and the servers. When the connection is established, then there is a two-way through which communication or transmission start. The channel for command or control channel that is stay open for the entire session means the command is sent from the client side, and definitely server will give the response of the commands. You can see that the command is given and response is generated, and when the command and response is generated, then there will be connection established. There will be connection established between the client and the servers, and now the exchange of data will be established. The channel for data channel that open or close to transfer data such as file, folder, listings, or from the server request are given by the client. Whatever the request given by the client, that will be served by the server. So this is the FTP models, but this communication will be established only through the command, which is known as FTP command, right? Let's move further. So let us see what is here. DTP, data transfer process. Basically, it is used to establish a connection between the client and the user. It establishes connection, manage the data channel also. This is important because when the connection is established, managing also plays an important part. At the client side, it is known as user DTP. At the server side, it is known as server DTP. DTP matlab data transfer process. What does it mean? The data will be transferred from the client to the server or from server to the client and vice versa. What about the protocol interpreter, PI? Control DTP using command receive over the control channels. It is different from the client and the server. Let us see what is the protocols basically over here. Here we have the server PI, means server protocol interpreter, and we have the user PI, means the client protocol interpreters. So what is the role and responsibility of server PI? Basically, it is responsible for listing the command which is coming from the server end or user end, that is from the client. This job or responsibility of the server PI is to accept the command and give response to the client. Server PI receive FTP command from the from the client, which is known as user protocol interpreter, and respond accordingly. See, and what is the role and responsibility of user PI? Basically, it is used for establishing a connection between the FTP server, sending FTP command, receiving response from the server PI, and controlling the user DTP if needed. So these are things which is in the FTP model, which is very much important, and it works completely based on client server architecture. All right, hopefully you understand this topic. Now let us see understand these things with the help of diagram. Let us see what is here. The FTP model, when an FTP client is connected to the FTP server, the user PI intimate the connection to the server according to the telnet protocol. Have you learned about telnet, which we have already discussed about this? If you want to know something about the telnet, just go to my previous video, which I have already uploaded in Gold on YouTube, and just check it out. I hope you will understand the telnet. And same thing here, the exchange of data will be done from client and server. So let us see something more about FTP model. What is here? The FTP client is connected to FTP server. When the connection is established, in that case, the role of protocol interpreter from the client end is that they initiate the connection with the server, as we are doing the same thing in telnet. Here, client will send FTP command and server will accept the FTP command. When the server accepts it, then they will interpret it and run the data transfer process. Once the connection is established, what will happen? Server give the port number through which data will be sent to the client end. So you can see the diagrams. See, this is the FTP client and this is FTP server. The major thing is that we have to do a connections, whether data or control, with the help of internet. Why it is needed? Just to send the data to the client or just receive the data from the server. Client data process transfer process listen to the specified port which is given by the server, and through that they will accept the data which is coming from the server end. All right, hopefully this is clear to all of you. Very simple. Let's move further. You see here there is one client but server is different. Remember one thing, data and control data and control both are different things. At the control connections, I have already told you that there is the command and response which is given from the client or to the server. And what about the data? Data means where the data will be received or data will be sent, or vice versa. We can do it. So, so data connection and control connection both play important role in FTP model, but we are here to learn that we are receiving data from different server. It may be possible that the one machine request for a particular data and data will be sent to some other machine. It might be possible. You can see here that it is possible to send command from one machine. Okay, fine. I have given the command from my terminal, from my workstations, and but the output which I think that this data will be received, may be possible that the same command will be received or accepted by some other machine. It might be possible. For this, there is no point to worry because data will be exchanged from any server. All are equally connected from client end. So it is possible to transfer data between the FTP server by passing through the client to send control instructions by transferring information between the two server process connected on the right port. I have already told you that when the connection is established, then server job is to give them a port number through which exchange of data will be possible. Server will give the port number, and it may be possible that through any server data will be sent to the client end with that port only. All right, let's move furthermore. So let us see what are the different kind of connections in FTP model. There are the two kind of connection, active or passive. Basically, when the FTP client connect to the FTP servers, it open a connection to the FTP control port 21. Then the client tell the FTP server whether to establish active or passive. When the connection is established between the client and the server, then and it will open a connection at the port number 21. Remember these things. Then the FTP client tell the FTP server that what kind of connection the client is looking for, whether they are looking for active connection, whether they are looking for the passive connections. Whatever the request given by the client, server will definitely respond and the port transition will be occur accordingly. Let us understand one by one about the active or the passive connections. So, what is the active connections and what is the passive? Let's have a look. When an active connection is established, the server open a data connection to the client port 20 to hide and put on the client machine. All the data from the server is then passed over these connections. See, in the active connections, client send the request. At the same time, server will send the data as per the request from the client end. That means exchange of data will be done from both the end, from the client end or from the server, and vice versa. Vice versa means mutually they can exchange data and informations, whether in the form of textual, audio, video, or any multimedia files. Now let's have a look on passive connections. When connection is established, then client request to the server about the passive connection and the connection is established. In that case, they establish a passive connection port which is a much more higher port. I think it may be larger than 10,000. The server will bind this high number port for a particular session and release that port number back to the client. Now, the client will open the newly bounded port for the data connection. That means it will be open for the only client. Why it's happened? Whenever the client want to access data, the client can do that at any point of time. So this is one benefit that we are getting. So only the client play a role over here because server will not give any will not play any role right now because at the passive end all the request or data or the receiving data will be done by the client. Each data request the client make the result in separate data connections. Modern FTP client attempt to establish a passive connections when requesting data from the server. So nowadays, what happened? The TP connection, when the FTP connection is established, it is requesting for the passive because whenever the user will get time, definitely they will access the data, and that data will be every time available at the server. So server will now will not be in the active mode here. Only the client will do that. You can see the diagram, and this will help you to understand the difference. In the first picture, what you see FTP FTP here, here you see that FTP FTP in this client computer request for control connections, and they request to share some data, or they want to access some data from the server end. Server accept their request and then send back data to the client at that point of time. So data is transferred, exchanged, or shared at both the end. But if we talk about the passive connections, client, when the connection is established between client and server, then client will tell the server that they are looking for the passive connections. That means the data will be predefined available at their end at a particular port. They will send all the data, server will send all the data at that high port, and whenever client will require to access that data, they will just go they will just go ahead to access those data whenever they required. Therefore, in passive connections, only the client use data and send data. All these things were played by client end, not from the server end. But in active, the role is played from both ends. Client request, server send at the same time. Both are in the active mode, but in the passive FTP, only client are active and server will be in a inactive mode. In another word, you can say this. So hopefully you have understood about the model of FTP model. You have all understood. In the next lecture, we'll learn something more about FTP command. Till then, good day. Bye all of you.